Captain Jake Morrison was drinking his morning coffee when the universe changed forever. The bridge of his ship was quiet. Just another routine patrol near the edge of human space where nothing ever happened. His crew was relaxed, some reading books, others playing cards in the break room. The only sounds were the gentle hum of the engines and the soft beeping of the computer systems. Then the communication console started flashing red. Amy Phillips, his communications officer, looked up from her screen with wide eyes. She had been in the space service for 8 years, but Jake had never seen her look so shocked. Her hands shook as she turned to face him. "Captain, you need to see this," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "We're getting a transmission, but it's not from Earth. It's not from any human ship." Jake set down his coffee cup and walked over to her station. On the screen was a message written in perfect English, but the symbols at the bottom were nothing he had ever seen before. Strange shapes that seemed to flow like water, beautiful but completely alien. "It says they want to talk to our leaders," Amy continued. "They call themselves the Galactic Council. Captain, I think we just made first contact." Jake felt his heart start beating faster. Every human had dreamed of this moment, but now that it was here, he felt scared and excited at the same time. He ordered Amy to record everything and send a copy back to Earth immediately. Then he told his crew to prepare for the most important moment in human history. The message was simple but amazing. The Galactic Council had been watching humanity for years. They were impressed with how quickly humans had learned to travel between stars. They wanted to invite Earth to join them as equals, to share knowledge and technology that would help humanity grow beyond their wildest dreams. Within days, Earth's best diplomats were on their way to Jake's ship. Lisa Grant led the team, a woman who had spent her life solving problems between different countries. If anyone could handle talking to aliens, it was her. She brought with her Carlos Rodriguez, Earth's smartest engineer, and Dr. Helen Parker, a scientist who understood technologies that most people couldn't even pronounce. The journey to the meeting point took 2 weeks. The Galactic Council had sent coordinates to a place far from Earth, in a part of space that humans had never explored. As they got closer, Jake's sensors started picking up something incredible. A space station so large it could hold entire cities floated in the darkness between stars. Lights covered its surface like stars, and ships of dozens of different designs moved around it like busy insects. "Look at the size of that thing," Carlos whispered as they approached. "We could fit all of Earth's space stations inside just one section." The station sent them a docking signal, and Jake carefully guided his ship into a bay that was clearly built for visitors. As the airlocks connected, he wondered if they were making a terrible mistake. But when the doors opened, what they saw took their breath away. A tall, graceful being waited for them. It had blue skin that seemed to glow softly and 4 arms instead of 2. Its eyes were large and kind, and when it smiled, Jake felt some of his fear disappear. "Welcome, humans," the being said in perfect English. Its voice was musical, like singing. "I am Ambassador Zethkaran of the Alteri people. We have waited so long to meet you." The ambassador led them through corridors that were more beautiful than any palace on Earth. The walls showed moving pictures of distant worlds, some covered in purple oceans, others with cities that floated in the clouds. Beings of all shapes and sizes walked past them, some nodding politely, others stopping to stare at the humans with curious eyes. Lisa tried to stay professional, but Jake could see she was just as amazed as the rest of them. "How many species belong to your council?" she asked. 47 different worlds," Zethkaran replied proudly. "Each one unique, each one contributing their special gifts to our community. And soon, we hope, 48. They entered a huge room that made Jake feel very small. The ceiling was so high he couldn't see the top, and beings of every description filled thousands of seats. Some looked almost human. Others were so strange that Jake couldn't figure out which end was their head. At the center of the room, on a platform that glowed with soft light, sat the most impressive creature Jake had ever seen. High Chancellor, Forthak was ancient and powerful. His people had started the Galactic Council thousands of years ago, bringing peace to a galaxy that had known only war. When he spoke, His voice filled the entire room without any microphone. "People of Earth," the Chancellor began, "today marks a great day for our galaxy. Your species has shown remarkable courage and intelligence. In just a few centuries, you have gone from a single world to exploring the stars. You have faced challenges that would destroy lesser species, yet you have survived and grown stronger." The Chancellor gestured to the beings around the room. "Each of our member worlds has a story of struggle and growth. Each has contributed something precious to our union. The Alteri brought their skills in energy manipulation. The Kethamori shared their knowledge of biology. The Zenthari taught us the secrets of faster-than-light travel." Jake noticed that every time the Chancellor mentioned a species, those beings seemed to sit up straighter with pride. It was like a vast family, each member valued for what they brought to the group. "Now we offer you the same opportunity," Vorthak continued. "Join us, and humanity will never face the dangers of the galaxy alone. Our technology will cure your diseases, extend your lives, and give you the power to reshape worlds. Our knowledge will unlock secrets of the universe that your scientists have only dreamed of. Our protection will keep you safe from the hostile forces that hunt in the dark, between stars." The offer seemed too good to be true. All the Council asked for was cooperation. Human ships would follow established space routes to avoid conflicts with other species. Earth would contribute 20% of its resources to help maintain the Council's peacekeeping forces. Human scientists would share their discoveries just as they would share in the knowledge of 47 other worlds. "Take time to consider," the Chancellor said kindly. "This is not a decision to make quickly. But know that the galaxy welcomes you with open arms. We have waited so long for humanity to join our great family." As they returned to their ship, Lisa and her team were quiet. Jake could see them thinking about everything they had seen and heard. The offer was generous, maybe too generous, but the alternative was staying alone in a galaxy full of dangers they didn't understand. "What do you think?" Jake asked Lisa as they prepared to return to Earth. Lisa stared out at the massive station, watching the ships of dozens of species coming and going. "I think," she said slowly, "that we just got invited to the most exclusive club in the galaxy. The question is, what's the real price of membership?" Captain Jake Morrison could not sleep. 3 days had passed since they left the Council station, but something bothered him about their warm welcome. He walked through his ship's corridors late at night, thinking about the perfect smiles and generous offers. Everything had been too smooth, too rehearsed, like a play performed many times before. Dr. Susan Taylor was still awake in the medical bay, studying the biological data they had collected during their visit. She had scanned dozens of alien species during their tour, claiming it was for Earth's medical records. What she found made her hands shake as she typed her report. "Captain," she called when she saw Jake pass by her door. "You need to see this." Jake entered the medical bay and found Susan surrounded by screens showing genetic charts and biological data. Her face was pale, and dark circles under her eyes showed she had not slept either. "Look at these scans," Susan said, pointing to a series of colorful diagrams. "Every species I studied shows signs of genetic modification. Not natural evolution, but deliberate changes made by someone else." Jake studied the screens but could not understand the complex data. "What kind of changes?" "The kind that make species more docile, more cooperative," Susan replied. "Look at the Alteri. Their brain chemistry has been altered to make them naturally submissive to authority. The Kethmori have had their aggressive impulses removed entirely. Every single species shows these modifications." Before Jake could respond, Ryan Burke's voice came over the ship's communication system. "Captain, I'm picking up some strange transmissions. You should hear this." Jake and Susan hurried to the bridge where Ryan sat hunched over his equipment. He was the best communications officer in the fleet, able to intercept and decode signals that others missed. His face was grim as he played back what he had recorded. The transmission was weak and fragmented, but the words were clear enough. It was a distress call from a species called the Vaxi, begging for help from anyone who would listen. They spoke of their mistake in joining the Council, of their children being taken to central worlds for education and never returning, of their military being disbanded for their own protection, leaving them helpless when pirates attacked their outer colonies. "There's more," Ryan said, switching to another recording. This one was from the hegemony of class, a proud warrior race that had joined the council 50 years ago. The message was from their former emperor, now living in exile on a distant moon. He spoke of how the council had slowly stripped away their traditions, their weapons, their very identity, until nothing remained but empty shells of their former selves. Lieutenant Kelly Lawson entered the bridge carrying a portable computer. She had been working with the ship's artificial intelligence, trying to analyze all the data they had collected. Her discoveries were even more disturbing than Susan's genetic evidence. "I've been digging through the historical records the council shared with us," Kelly said. "The patterns are identical across every species. First, they receive a generous invitation to join. Then they're slowly integrated into council society. Within a generation, their brightest minds are relocated to central worlds. Their military capabilities are reduced for peacekeeping purposes. Their resources are redirected to support the greater good." Kelly pulled up a chart showing the timeline of different species joining the council. "Look at this. Every single member species follows the exact same progression. Welcome, integration, absorption, silence. The ones that tried to resist suffered mysterious plagues, economic collapse, or attacks from unknown enemies that only the council could fight off." Jake felt a cold chill run down his spine. "Are you saying the council is lying to us?" "I'm saying they're predators," Kelly replied, "and we're their next meal." The evidence kept mounting as his crew dug deeper into the council's gift of information. Dr. Helen Parker, working in the engineering section, had been studying the advanced technologies the council had demonstrated. Her analysis revealed hidden dependencies in every single device. "Captain," Helen called over the intercom, "the fusion reactors they showed us require a specific type of fuel that can only be refined on council worlds. They're faster than light. Drives need crystals that grow only in council-controlled space. Even their medical equipment depends on rare elements that they have monopolized." Jake gathered his senior officers in the conference room. The mood was dark as they shared their findings. What had seemed like generous gifts were actually chains designed to bind humanity to the council forever. "They're not offering us membership," Jake said slowly. "They're offering us slavery with better marketing." Ryan had continued monitoring council communications, using equipment that was supposedly impossible to detect. What he heard made everyone understand the true scope of the trap being prepared for humanity. "They don't think we're special because of our progress," Ryan reported. "They need us because their expansion has reached a critical point. Their genetic diversity is declining because they've modified so many species. They need fresh DNA to prevent their empire from collapsing." Susan nodded grimly. "That explains the genetic modifications I found. They're not just controlling behavior, they're harvesting genetic material. Every species in the council is slowly being bred into one homogeneous population under their control." Kelly had uncovered the council's expansion plans, buried deep in the files they had shared. "Earth's location is perfect for their next phase of growth. Our solar system would give them access to 3 previously unreachable sectors of the galaxy. We're not being invited because we're special. We're being invited because we're useful." The most chilling discovery came from intercepted communications between council members discussing the human delegation. The aliens spoke of humanity with the same tone farmers might use to discuss livestock. They debated whether to preserve human culture as a curiosity or allow it to be absorbed entirely into council society. "Useful primitives," one council member had called them. "Their aggressive nature could be beneficial if properly channeled. Their reproductive rate is excellent for our breeding programs." Jake felt sick as he listened to the recordings. These beings who had welcomed them so warmly saw humans as nothing more than animals to be domesticated and used. "We have to warn Earth," Amy said. "Our government needs to know what they're really offering." But even as they prepared their report, Jake knew the challenge they faced. Earth's leaders were already celebrating humanity's acceptance into galactic society. The promise of advanced technology and protection from unknown dangers was intoxicating. Many would not want to hear that their dreams of a peaceful galactic community were built on lies. Carlos had been quiet throughout the meeting, but now he spoke up. What if we're wrong? What if we're seeing threats that don't exist because we're scared? Susan pulled up her genetic analysis again. The evidence doesn't lie, Carlos. Every species in the Council has been genetically modified to be more compliant. That's not speculation, it's scientific fact. Ryan nodded. And I've intercepted dozens of transmissions from Council territories. Species that joined willingly are now crying for help that never comes. Their distress calls are blocked by Council communication networks. Jake made the decision that would change everything. We're going home. Earth needs to know what they're really being offered before it's too late. As their ship turned toward Earth, Jake wondered if they would be believed. The Council's offer was so tempting, so perfectly designed to appeal to humanity's deepest desires. Advanced medicine to cure all diseases. Technology to solve energy shortages and feed everyone on Earth. Protection from the dangers of an unknown galaxy. All they had to give up in return was their freedom. The journey back to Earth gave Jake's crew time to prepare their evidence. Every note, genetic scan, every intercepted communication, every historical pattern was documented and verified. They knew they would face skepticism and resistance from people who desperately wanted to believe in the Council's generous offer. But as Jake watched the stars stream past his ship's windows, he knew they had no choice. Humanity deserved to know the truth, even if that truth meant staying alone in a dangerous galaxy rather than accepting the comfortable cage the Council offered. The real question was whether Earth's leaders would have the courage to refuse what seemed like the greatest opportunity in human history. Jake hoped they would because he was beginning to understand that some gifts came with a price too terrible to pay. The emergency meeting in Geneva was unlike anything President Charles Bennett had ever experienced. World leaders, military commanders, and scientists filled the secure conference room deep beneath the United Nations building. The evidence that Captain Morrison's team had brought back from the Council station lay spread across dozens of screens, each piece more disturbing than the last. Admiral Patricia Stone, head of Earth's combined space forces, studied the genetic analysis reports. With growing alarm, she had served in 3 wars and seen humanity at its worst, but this was something entirely different. This was the systematic destruction of free will itself. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, President Bennett said, his voice tight with controlled anger. These beings who claim to welcome us as equals have genetically modified every species in their council to make them more obedient. Dr. Susan Taylor nodded from her position at the front of the room. The modifications are subtle but unmistakable. Brain chemistry altered to reduce aggressive impulses, hormone levels changed to increase submissive behavior, genetic markers that make them physically dependent on council-produced medicines. Economic advisor Robert Chen raised his hand. But surely the benefits outweigh the risks. Their technology could solve climate change, cure cancer, end poverty. Are we really going to reject all of that based on speculation about their motives? Captain Morrison stepped forward. It's not speculation, sir. We have recordings of council members discussing humanity like we're livestock. They don't see us as equals. They see us as their next acquisition. The room erupted in heated debate. Some officials argued that humanity could accept the Council's technology while remaining independent. Others worried about making enemies of such a powerful alliance. The promises of galactic citizenship were intoxicating, and many powerful figures had already publicly supported accepting the Council's offer. Lisa Grant, who had led the diplomatic mission, felt torn between her duty to her species and her desire to believe in the Council's good intentions. Maybe we could negotiate better terms, she suggested. They seemed willing to discuss the details of membership. Ryan Burke played back one of the intercepted communications. The Council member's voice filled the room as it casually discussed the timeline for humanity's absorption. Phase 1 integration should take approximately 15 Earth years. By then, their military capacity will be sufficiently reduced and their genetic material properly catalogued. Phase 2 can begin with the relocation of their intellectual class to Central Worlds. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. These beings weren't offering partnership. They were planning conquest with a smile. Dr. Helen Parker stood up with her analysis of Council technology. Every device they demonstrated has built-in dependencies. Their fusion reactors need fuel that can only be made on Council worlds. Their medical scanners require rare minerals they control. Even their basic tools are designed to make users dependent on Council supply chains. She brought up a detailed diagram showing the technological trap. Accept their gifts, and within a decade we won't be able to maintain our own infrastructure without their help. They'll own us completely. General Mike Foster, commander of Earth's orbital defense platforms, asked the question everyone was thinking. Can we fight them if they decide to take what they want by force? Admiral Stone's answer was sobering. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours. One of their ships could probably destroy our entire fleet. We'd be fighting with arrows against nuclear weapons. The debate raged for hours. President Bennett watched his advisors argue, knowing that the decision would affect not just Earth but the entire future of humanity. Some officials pointed out the immediate benefits of accepting Council membership. Others warned that rejection could mean facing the galaxy's dangers alone. The breakthrough came when Lieutenant Kelly Lawson presented her historical analysis. She had traced the fate of every species that had ever refused to join the Council. The pattern was always the same: mysterious accidents, sudden attacks by unknown forces, plagues that appeared from nowhere. The Council has a perfect record, Kelly reported. Every species either joins willingly or gets destroyed by convenient tragedies. There's no such thing as independent civilizations in their territory. President Bennett felt the weight of the decision pressing down on him. Accept the Council's offer, and humanity would slowly lose everything that made them human. Refuse it, and they would likely face destruction from forces they couldn't possibly defeat. What about the distress calls Morrison's team intercepted? Asked Secretary of State Janet Miller. Are there any species still resisting Council control? Ryan Burke shook his head sadly. The calls are getting weaker and less frequent. Most species that tried to resist have already been absorbed or eliminated. The few survivors are hiding in the darkest corners of space, barely staying alive. Dr. Parker made one final presentation that changed everything. She had been studying the Council's own records, looking for weaknesses in their seemingly perfect system. What she found gave humanity its first glimmer of hope. The Council's expansion has limits, she announced. Their technology works best in certain types of space. They avoid regions with unstable stars, quantum anomalies, or high radiation levels. Their ships can't handle extreme environmental conditions because they rely too heavily on advanced systems, she brought up a star map showing vast regions of space that the Council had marked as uninhabitable. They've surveyed thousands of systems, but declared them too dangerous to colonize. These areas represent nearly 30% of the galaxy. Admiral Stone leaned forward with interest. Are you suggesting we could survive in areas too hostile for Council technology? I'm suggesting more than that, Parker replied. I'm suggesting we could thrive there. Human ships are built to handle harsh conditions because we started with primitive technology. We had to make our equipment tough and reliable. The Council's advanced systems are actually more fragile than ours in extreme environments. President Bennett saw a glimmer of possibility in what Parker was proposing. Are you talking about abandoning known space entirely? I'm talking about choosing freedom over comfort, Parker answered. The Council controls the civilized galaxy, but there are entire regions they can't reach. If we're willing to face the unknown, we could build our own civilization beyond their grasp. The room fell silent as everyone considered the magnitude of what she was suggesting. Leave behind everything humanity had built. Abandon the known galaxy and venture into regions so dangerous that even the mighty Council feared to go there. General Foster was the first to speak. It would be the greatest exodus in human history. We'd be completely on our own, facing dangers we can't even imagine. But we'd be free, Admiral Stone added quietly. Free to develop our own technology, free to make our own mistakes, free to choose our own destiny. President Bennett looked around the room at the faces of humanity's leaders. Fear and uncertainty showed in their eyes, but also something else. The same spark that had driven humans to leave their caves and explore. the unknown, to cross oceans and reach for the stars. The council is expecting an answer, he said finally. What do we tell them? Lisa Grant had been quiet throughout the debate, thinking about her meeting with Chancellor Vorthak. She remembered his confidence, his certainty that humanity would eventually submit like all the others. The arrogance in his ancient eyes as he offered them a place in his collection of tamed species. We tell them no, she said, her voice growing stronger with each word. We tell them that humanity didn't crawl out of caves and reach for the stars just to kneel in their palace. We tell them that some things are more important than safety and comfort. President Bennett nodded slowly. The decision would doom humanity to exile from galactic civilization, but it would preserve the one thing that made them human, their freedom to choose their own path. Then it's decided, he announced. Earth rejects the Galactic Council's offer of membership. Lisa, you'll return to their station and deliver our response personally. As the meeting broke up, Bennett knew they were gambling with the survival of their entire species. The council would not take rejection well, and their response would likely be swift and terrible. But as he watched Earth's leaders file out of the room, their faces set with determination despite their fear, he felt a surge of pride. Humanity had always been willing to face the unknown rather than accept comfortable chains. Today, they had proven that some things never changed. The Council's response to humanity's rejection was swift and brutal. Within days of Lisa Grant delivering Earth's refusal, human ships across the galaxy began disappearing. Trade routes that had been promised were suddenly declared off-limits to human vessels. Technology demonstrations that had been scheduled were canceled without explanation. Most ominously, reports started flooding back to Earth of coordinated attacks on human colonies and outposts. Captain Jake Morrison found himself leading increasingly desperate rescue missions as the scope of the Council's retaliation became clear. His latest assignment had brought him to the ruins of Kepler Colony, one of humanity's furthest settlements. The sight that greeted him when he arrived made his blood run cold. The colony's defensive platforms were twisted metal wreckage floating in space. The main settlement on the planet's surface showed signs of precise military-style destruction. Buildings had been systematically demolished, with certain facilities completely destroyed while others remained untouched. This wasn't random violence. This was surgical warfare. Mayor Joe Crawford met Morrison's shuttle at what remained of the landing pad. The man looked 10 years older than when Morrison had seen him last, his face lined with exhaustion and grief. Behind him stood his daughter, Beth, a young engineer who had been working on the colony's experimental mining operations. Thank God you came, Joe said, his voice hoarse from smoke and strain. We've been sending distress calls for 3 days, but all our long-range communications are down. Beth led Morrison's team through the damaged colony, explaining what had happened. They came without warning, she said, pointing to the wreckage of the colony's sensor array. No identifying marks on their ships, but their equipment was definitely Council-grade technology. They knew exactly what they were after. The attack had been precisely planned. The raiders had destroyed the colony's defenses first, then landed. Troops that moved with military precision. They hadn't come to conquer or occupy. They had come to steal specific resources and people. They took Dr. Alex Morgan, Joe explained, his voice bitter with anger. Along with 3 other scientists and all our research data, they also cleaned out our entire stockpile of rare minerals, the ones we'd been developing for Earth's new ship designs. Morrison examined the blast patterns and weapon signatures left by the attackers. Everything pointed to Council involvement, but in a way that provided perfect cover for denial. No identifying marks, no survivors who could testify about their attacker's identity. No evidence that would hold up in any galactic court. As Morrison's team helped evacuate the surviving colonists, more reports reached Earth about similar attacks throughout human space. The pattern was always the same: surgical strikes that stole valuable resources while maintaining plausible deniability. The Council was strip-mining human civilization while publicly maintaining their innocence. Lieutenant Colonel Nick Adams, Earth's chief intelligence officer, briefed Admiral Stone on the full scope of the campaign against humanity. The attacks weren't random or purely destructive. They were carefully planned operations designed to cripple human development while harvesting their most valuable assets. "They're taking our best people," Adams reported. "Scientists, engineers, doctors, anyone with specialized knowledge. The attacks always target research facilities and educational centers first. They're stealing our intellectual capital." But the physical attacks were only part of the Council's strategy. They had also launched a propaganda campaign throughout the galaxy, spreading carefully crafted information about humanity to other species. According to these reports, humans were violent, unpredictable, and dangerous to galactic peace. Species that might have been willing to trade with humanity independently were warned away. Neutral worlds that had shown interest in human culture suddenly closed their borders. Even the few species that had never joined the Council began treating human ships as potential threats. Admiral Stone studied the intelligence reports with growing frustration. "They're isolating us completely. No allies, no trade partners, no safe havens anywhere in known space." The noose was tightening around humanity with methodical precision. Earth's colonies were under constant attack. Their trade routes were blocked and their reputation was being systematically destroyed. The message was clear: submit to Council authority or face slow extinction. President Bennett called another emergency session. This one focused on humanity's options for survival. The mood in the room was grim as reports came in of another colony, evacuation, and 2 more missing ships. "They're giving us a choice," Bennett said to his assembled advisors. "Surrender and accept their protection, or watch our civilization slowly bleed to death from 1,000 small cuts." Dr. Helen Parker had been working around the clock on the Exodus plan she had proposed earlier. Her team had identified dozens of star systems in the regions the Council avoided, areas deemed too dangerous or unprofitable for their expansion. The plan was ambitious beyond anything humanity had ever attempted. "We would need to evacuate entire populations," Parker explained. "Not just Earth, but every human settlement in known space. The logistics alone are staggering. We're talking about moving millions of people to completely unknown regions with no infrastructure, no support systems, no guarantee of survival." General Mike Foster raised the obvious concerns. "We'd be abandoning everything we've built, our orbital cities, our industrial facilities, our established colonies. We'd be starting from scratch in hostile environments. The alternative is becoming pets in the Council's zoo," Admiral Stone replied bluntly. "At least in unknown space, we'd have a chance to remain human." The debate was interrupted by an urgent communication from Captain Morrison. He had just received a transmission that changed everything. It was a message from Chancellor Vorthak himself, broadcast directly to Earth's leadership. The ancient alien's image filled the conference room screens, his expression a mixture of disappointment and barely contained fury. When he spoke, his words carried the weight of absolute authority. "People of Earth," the Chancellor began, "your stubborn pride has forced us to take measures we had hoped to avoid. Your colonies burn because you have chosen isolation over cooperation. Your people suffer because you have rejected our generous offer of protection." The Chancellor's image leaned forward, his alien features twisted with anger. "But we are not without mercy. Return to us now. Accept our guidance, and we will forgive this temporary madness. Your colonies will be rebuilt, your people will be safe, and humanity will take its rightful place among the civilized species of the galaxy." The transmission ended with a clear deadline. Humanity had 72 hours to reconsider their rejection of Council membership. After that, the Chancellor implied, more serious measures would be taken. President Bennett looked around the room at the faces of humanity's leaders. Fear was there, certainly, but also something the Council had never encountered in all their centuries of conquest: defiance. "They still don't understand us," Bennett said quietly. "They think we're like all the others, that enough pressure will make us submit. They don't realize that humans have a habit of becoming more stubborn when threatened." Admiral Stone nodded grimly. "The Exodus fleet is already being assembled. Every military ship, every civilian transport, every vessel that can carry people, to the edge of known space. If we're going to do this, we need to move fast before they decide to stop playing games." Mayor Crawford, who had stayed for the emergency session after his colony's evacuation, spoke up from the back of the room. My people lost everything when the raiders came. But you know what they told me as we loaded them onto the rescue ships? They said they'd rather live in exile as free humans than prosper as council slaves. Beth Crawford nodded agreement. We've already lost our home once. We can lose it again, if that's what it takes to stay free. President Bennett felt a surge of pride as he looked at these representatives of humanity's finest qualities. They had lost homes, loved ones, and livelihoods to the Council's attacks, but their spirit remained unbroken. Then it's unanimous, he declared. We reject the Council's ultimatum. Begin the evacuation immediately. Every human ship, every human settlement, every person who wants to remain free needs to be ready to leave known space within 60 hours. The meeting broke up, and Earth's leaders rushed to coordinate the greatest exodus in galactic history. Bennett remained behind to compose humanity's final message to the Council. It would be delivered by Lisa Grant one last time, carried to the Council station by the fastest ship in the human fleet. The message was simple but would echo through galactic history. Humanity had made its choice, and no amount of threats or bribes would change their minds. They would face the unknown rather than accept comfortable chains, gamble with extinction rather than guarantee slavery. The galaxy had begged them to join its civilized community, but humans had chosen to walk away into the dark between the stars. Now the Council would learn what happened when a species valued freedom more than safety, independence more than comfort. The countdown to Exodus had begun. The greatest migration in galactic history began at dawn on a Tuesday. Across human space, millions of people abandoned the homes they had built among the stars and loaded everything they could carry onto ships bound for the unknown. The sight would have broken the hearts of earlier generations who had dreamed of humanity spreading peacefully across the galaxy. But these people understood that some dreams came with prices too high to pay. Admiral Patricia Stone stood on the bridge of the U.S. Liberty, watching the Exodus fleet assemble in Earth's orbit. Thousands of ships of every size and design had answered the call. Military vessels flew alongside civilian transports. Cargo haulers traveled next to luxury yachts. Mining ships formed up with scientific research vessels. Every ship that could carry human life had been pressed into service for this desperate gamble. Captain Jake Morrison's ship was part of the advanced scout fleet, ranging ahead of the main convoy to identify safe routes through the dangerous regions they would need to traverse. His sensors showed massive gravitational anomalies, unstable star systems, and radiation fields that would cook unshielded ships in minutes. These were the areas the mighty Galactic Council had marked as too hazardous to explore, and now they would become humanity's new home. Dr. Helen Parker worked frantically in her temporary laboratory aboard one of the evacuation ships, studying the Council's own survey data to find systems where human technology might actually have advantages. Her discoveries had given the Exodus plan its only real hope of success. The Council's ships are marvels of engineering, she explained, to a gathering of human captains, but they're built for comfort and efficiency in safe space. Their power systems can't handle extreme radiation. Their navigation computers fail in strong gravitational fields. Their life support relies on processed materials that aren't available in wilderness space. She brought up a holographic map showing their intended destination. A cluster of young, unstable stars surrounded by debris fields and electromagnetic storms. Human ships were built by people who expected things to break. Our technology is crude but robust. We can survive in places where their advanced systems would fail completely. The psychological impact of the Exodus was almost as important as the physical journey. Every human who chose to leave known space was making a statement that freedom mattered more than comfort, that independence was worth any risk. Children who had grown up on established colonies were saying goodbye to the only homes they had ever known, following their parents into an uncertain future. Mayor Joe Crawford had become an unofficial spokesman for the civilian evacuees. His experience losing Kepler Colony to Council raiders had shown him that safety under Council protection was an illusion. They're offering us a choice between two kinds of death, he told gatherings of worried colonists. Death of the body, in unknown space, or death of the soul under Council rule. I know which one I choose. His daughter Beth had thrown herself into helping design the industrial equipment they would need to rebuild civilization from scratch. "We're not just running away," she reminded everyone who would listen. "We're building something new, something that belongs to us." The Council's response to the Exodus was initially one of amused disbelief. Chancellor Vorthak sent several messages to Earth's leaders, offering increasingly generous terms if humanity would abandon their suicidal flight into the void. The ancient aliens seemed genuinely puzzled that any species would choose exile over the comfort and security of Council membership. "Your people will die in the wasteland between stars," one message warned. "The regions you flee to are filled with dangers that have claimed entire civilizations, radiation storms that strip flesh from bone, gravitational anomalies that tear ships apart, hostile life forms that evolution never intended to exist. Return now, and we will welcome you as honored members of our community." President Bennett's response was delivered personally by Lisa Grant on her final diplomatic mission to the Council station. She carried with her the words that would be remembered as humanity's declaration of independence from galactic civilization. "We thank the Council for their generous offers," Lisa said, standing before the assembled representatives of 47 worlds. "But humanity must decline. We choose the terrifying freedom of the unknown over the comfortable prison of the known. We would rather face the void as free humans than prosper as your pets." The reaction in the Council chamber was immediate and telling. Some species looked shocked that anyone would refuse such generosity. Others seemed envious that humanity had an option they had never been offered. A few appeared frightened by the implications of what the humans were doing. Chancellor Vorthak's ancient face showed confusion more than anger. In all his centuries of expanding Council territory, no species had ever simply walked away from galactic civilization. His system of control was based on the assumption that all intelligent life wanted safety and comfort above all else. Humanity's choice challenged the fundamental beliefs that justified his empire. "You condemn your entire species to extinction," the Chancellor declared. "No civilization has ever survived alone in the dark regions you seek to enter. Your children will curse your names as they die in the cold between stars." Lisa's response would echo through human history. "Our children will be free to curse us if they choose. That freedom is worth more than any guarantee of safety you can offer." As the human fleet began its journey toward the edge of known space, other species throughout the galaxy watched with fascination and fear. For the first time in millennia, someone had said no to the Galactic Council and lived to tell about it. The very possibility of independence had been reintroduced to a galaxy that had forgotten such concepts existed. Some Council member species sent secret messages to the departing humans, wishing them luck and asking them to remember those left behind. These communications had to be carefully hidden from Council monitoring, but their existence proved that the human example was already inspiring thoughts of rebellion in species that had long accepted their subjugation. The journey itself was harrowing. Human ships pushed through radiation storms that would have destroyed Council vessels, navigated gravitational mazes using instruments the Council considered primitive, and survived in environments deemed uninhabitable by galactic standards. Every successful obstacle crossed proved Dr. Parker's theory that human technology, built for harsh conditions, could thrive where Council perfection failed. Captain Morrison's scouts found the first viable system 3 months into the Exodus. A young star with planets still cooling from their formation, surrounded by asteroid fields rich in rare minerals. The radiation levels would have been lethal to most Council species, but humans had been dealing with hostile environments since they first left Earth's protective atmosphere. "It's not pretty," Morrison reported back to the main fleet, "but it's ours. No Council presence, no surveillance networks, no rules except the ones we make for ourselves." The first human settlements in the new region were built from salvaged ship parts and determination. Children who had never known anything but the comfortable predictability of Council space learned to live with the daily uncertainty of survival in hostile territory. Adults who had spent their lives following established trade routes and safety protocols learned to make decisions without the guidance of galactic authority. The psychological transformation was as dramatic as the physical. 1. Humans who had grown up thinking of themselves as junior partners in galactic civilization began to see themselves as pioneers again. the species that had once reached for the stars despite having no guarantee they would find anything worth reaching, for had rediscovered that courage. Admiral Stone established the first major colony on a world they named New Geneva, in honor of the city where humanity had made its fateful choice. The planet's surface was swept by constant electrical storms, and its atmosphere required special equipment to breathe, but it was completely beyond the reach of Council influence. "We're not refugees anymore," Stone announced at the colony's dedication ceremony. "We're the founders of something new, something that belongs entirely to us." Back in Council space, Chancellor Vorthak struggled to understand what had happened. His perfect system of control had encountered its first complete failure. The humans had not submitted, had not been absorbed, had not been eliminated. They had simply left, taking their genetic diversity, their technological innovations, and their troublesome ideas of independence with them. For the first time in his long reign, the Chancellor faced questions from member species about the necessity of Council oversight. If humans could survive alone in the dark between stars, other species began to wonder why couldn't they? The very existence of independent humanity beyond Council borders became a challenge to everything the Council represented. The galaxy had begged humanity to join its civilized community, offering them all the benefits of advanced technology and peaceful cooperation. In return, all they had asked was submission to the natural order that had governed galactic society for millennia. But humans had chosen to walk away into the dark between the stars, carrying with them something the galaxy had almost forgotten existed, the possibility that intelligent life could choose its own destiny.